silence better than the sound of my own name. I kept making excuses while you slowly changed. I stood in all your shadows, told myself I was okay. I called it love and loyalty as I disappeared each day. I gave you every color, you left me shades of gray. I stayed until I faded, till my voice was barely there. I held us up with shaking hands while you stopped showing care. I loved you through the emptiness and told myself it's fate. I stayed until I faded. I stopped asking for your time, stopped needing to be seen. I learned to love you quietly so you wouldn't leave. I strang myself to fit your world, like that was something great. I called it understanding while I dug my own grave. I thought if I stayed smaller, you might finally stay. I stayed until I faded, till I forgot my name. I bent my truth to keep the peace while you walked away unchanged. I gave you all I had to give, you took and turned away. I stayed until I faded. If love means losing who you are, I don't know what it's for. I crossed every line for us, still you asked for more. I thought my patience was a gift, turns out it was a plea. I stayed hoping you'd notice what this love was doing to me. I stayed until I faded, till there was nothing left. I poured my heart into the cracks and called it loving death. You left with all your pieces, I stayed with the remains. I stayed until I faded. Some goodbyes don't happen once, they happen every day. I held our dreams like fragile glass, tried to shield them from the storm. I gave you everything I had, even when your heart stayed warm. I whispered hopes into the night, believed you'd meet me halfway. But every time I reached for you, you slowly walked away. I carried all the weight of love while you let it fall apart. You didn't fight for us while I was bleeding in your arms. I stayed when love needed courage. You never gave me a single spark. I held the pieces up forever, though you let them fall to dust. I loved you through the silence. and I was the one who stayed. You didn't fight for us while I was holding on too tight. I stayed through all the heartbreak, even when there was no fight. I loved you with my final breath, even when it wasn't enough. I stayed until my heart broke. But you didn't fight for us. Some love dies quietly, not for lack of trying, but for lack of care. You packed your things and sentenced. You never finished out. Your eyes said don't ask questions. Your lips forgot how to sound. The room was full of silence, louder than goodbye. You stood there like a stranger, still holding half my life. Every word you swallowed still echoes in my head. You left me unsaid, with all the love you couldn't face. 1,000 things you should have told me, and now haunting every place. You walked away so carefully, like truth would break instead. You didn't leave me lonely, you left me unsaid. I learned to read between your pauses, your half smiles, your disguise. You called it finding yourself, I called it learning to survive. I would have carried all your honesty if you'd let it fall, but you chose quiet over truth and silence over us all. If leaving was so easy, why to stay and hurt like this? You left me unsaid, with questions I still can't erase. Every maybe and almost frozen in your place. I searched for closure in the dark, but you never turned your head. You didn't break me loudly, you left me unsaid. Say it was fear, say it was timing, say you just didn't know how to stay. Say anything now, even too late. Just don't let silence have the last say. You left me unsaid, like love was too heavy to hold. You chose to disappear quietly instead of growing bold. I'm learning how to live with words I never got to read. You didn't leave me heartless, you left me in between. Some goodbyes don't end in tears, they end in everything you never said. watched the light fade in your eyes, knew the words you'd never say. Still I held on to every moment, hoping you would find your way. I carried all the memories, even when they cut me deep. I loved you through the breaking, even as you chose to leave. I whispered to the night, hoping you could hear my pain. I loved you despite the end, when the world was pulling us apart. I gave you all my heart again, even knowing it would break my heart. I held the pieces of us, though they fell like sand through my hand. I loved you despite the end, though nothing would withstand. I memorized the shape of your smile, the warmth I'll never touch again. I kept the hope alive too long, even though I knew it was pretend. I spoke your name in quiet prayers, I carried your ghost in my chest. I loved you even when it hurt, even when I had no rest. I stayed in the shadows where love met its decay. I loved you despite the end, when the silence was louder than your voice. I held the love that wouldn't bend, even when there was no choice. I kept the dreams we almost had, even when they slipped away. I loved you despite the end, even as the night claimed the day. Maybe love is fearless, even when it loses all. I gave you every heartbeat, even knowing you'd fall. Some hearts stay open, even when doors close tight. I loved you despite the end, I loved you through the night. I loved you despite the end, when the tears fell like rain. I held the flame of us through the heartbreak and the pain. I whispered every promise, though you'd never hear again. I loved you despite the end, and I'll love you till the end. Some love doesn't fade, it only waits in quiet shadows. I felt you in morning light, even when you weren't around. I whispered all my secret hopes, hoping they might reach your sound. I carried every laugh we shared, every tear I didn't show. I loved you in silence and shadows, even when you didn't know. Every heartbeat called your name, even when you were far away. I loved you in every breath, through every storm, traced the shape of your absence, felt your ghost in every room. I kept your memory alive, even as my heart consumed. I loved you in the tiny things, the whispers and the quiet pain. I held on to the pieces of us, even when they slipped like rain. I gave my all without return, but my heart refused to learn. I loved you in every breath, through the silence and the rain. I carried all that could have been, even through the endless pain. I kept the fire alive inside me, even when it burned my chest. I loved you in every breath, and I loved you at your best. Maybe love is endless, even when it can't be shared. I've held you in my lungs, even when life wasn't fair. Remember every heartbeat, every fragile step we met. I loved you in every breath, and I'll never forget. Loved you in every breath, through the nights I couldn't sleep. I held you when you weren't with me, even when the hurt was deep. I carried every moment, every whisper, every theft. I loved you in every breath. I loved you in every breath. Some love lives quietly, even when it leaves you aching. I whispered your name in the dark, like it was holy, like it was sacred. I folded all my hope in my hands, praying for you to stay. I lit candles for our moments, every touch, every glance. I asked the stars for answers, even though love had no chance. I gave all my faith to a heart that never knew how to pray. I loved you like a prayer, silent, desperate, true. I carried you inside me, there. I knelt in the spaces between us where your words never reached. I tried to turn my hope into something that your heart might teach. I memorized the way you'd smile like it was a sacred hymn. I gave you every blessing and let the world grow dim. I catered you feel my love, even if you couldn't say. I loved you like a prayer, even in the quietest night. I held my faith with trembling hands, hoping you'd see the light. I built a heaven in my chest for the love you never said. I love you like a prayer, even when you didn't care. But love is devotion, and I was faithful to the end. But prayers unanswered are the hardest to defend. I knelt on the floor of my heart and begged for one more sign. But sometimes love's a temple built only in the mind. I loved you like a prayer through every shadow and fear. I gave you everything I had, even when you weren't near. I held my faith through heartbreak, through the silence and despair. I loved you like a prayer. I loved you like a prayer. Some loves are hymns, sung quietly to empty skies. I loved you past goodbye. The room still knows your shadow, even after you walked away. Your name is in the silence I never learned to say. I folded up the memories like letters I can't send. You said this was the ending, but my heart missed that trend. You closed the door so gently, I stayed there on the floor. I love you past goodbye, past the last thing you said. When the world said it was over, you lived inside my head. I let you go in daylight, but at night I still try. I loved you past goodbye. I smile like I've recovered, like I'm stronger than before. this way, but I never learned how to stop loving who you were when you're not here now. I loved you past goodbye, past the tears, past the pain. I stayed when there was nothing left but memories and rain. If loving you was wrong, then I don't want to be right. I loved you past goodbye. Some loves don't end, they just stop being mine. I loved you. The silence. You didn't say you were leaving, you just stopped letting me in. Your words faded into quiet, but my love stayed where it'd been. I learned the sound of your distance, the way you look past my eyes. Every pause felt like a promise that somehow never arrived. I waited in all the spaces you never filled. I loved you through the silence, through every unanswered call. I held on to what we used to be while you gave nothing at all. I spoke with my heart breaking, you listened without sound. I loved you through the silence till it broke me down. I stopped asking you what was wrong, afraid you'd say my name. So I stayed inside the quiet and learned to shoulder the blame. I read between all the moments, you chose to say nothing back. I kept believing your absence didn't mean we were cracked. I called it understanding, but it was pain. I loved you through the silence. When you turn your heart away, I filled the dark with hope and prayer, so you wouldn't have to stay. I kept talking to the shadow of who you used to be. I loved you through the silence while you lost me. Love shouldn't feel like waiting for someone to explain why your tears fall unnoticed, why your calling feels in vain. I stayed when words could have saved us, but silence chose your side, and every moment you said nothing was a quiet goodbye. I loved you through the silence till I forgot my voice. I begged with all my patience, you answered with the choice to leave me in the quiet, to love you on my own. I loved you through the silence, now I'm letting go. If love is never spoken, it still can't break a heart. gave you all my quiet mornings, all my nights, my whispered dreams. I held your heart like it was fragile, even when it tore at the seams. I memorized the shape of your silence, waited for the words you'd never say. I loved you through the storms and shadows, even when you walked away. I carried all your weight inside me, even when it crushed my soul. I loved you too much, more than my own heart could hold. I stayed through every emptiness, through the lies I never told. I gave you all my everything, even when it wasn't enough. I love you too much. I loved you too much. I forgave what should have broken me, smiled when I was aching inside. I gave you every part of myself, while you let our love collide. I held your doubts like precious gold, believed in us through the pain. But love can't survive on one heartbeat. It crumbles when it's all in vain. I pray that you would finally see the heart you didn't keep. I loved you too much, even when your love was small. I stayed through all your silence, even when I had to fall. I carried every memory, though they burned me from within. I loved you too much. I loved you too much. Maybe love shouldn't feel like bleeding. Maybe giving isn't enough. I gave my soul, I gave my all, but you never fought for us. I remember the devotion, even when it cost me pain. I love you too much, and yet I loved again. I loved you too much, more than the stars above. I stayed when I should have walked away. I gave you every ounce of love. I held the flame of us alone, through the heartbreak and the rush. I loved you too much. I even when it burns you alive. I held your hand like it was sacred. You held it like a passing thing. I memorized your quiet breathing. You barely noticed everything. I planned forever in my silence. You planned escape in plain sight. I was building us a shelter. You were packing up your life. I kept believing in you someday while you already gone. I loved you when you didn't, when your heart was somewhere else. I gave you all the parts of me you never gave yourself. I stayed through all your distance. I believed what wasn't true. I loved you with my whole heart when you didn't love me too. You said you needed time to feel it. I said I'd wait, no questions asked. I wore your doubts like promises, pretending pain could pass. I mistook your indecision for a love afraid to speak. But love doesn't feel like begging or disappearing each week. You called it being honest, I called it losing you. I loved you when you didn't, when your eyes looked through my face. I fought for something breaking while you kept your escape. I stayed loyal to a feeling you already outgrew. I loved you through the silence when you didn't love me too. Oh, maybe love should meet you halfway, not leave you alone in the dark. I kept setting myself on fire just to feel you warm your heart. I loved you when you didn't, when staying hurt more than goodbye. I gave you every reason while you never even tried. Now I'm learning how to let go of the lie I held on to. I loved you like it was forever when you didn't, when you didn't love me too. Some loves don't end in hatred, they end in truth too late to save. I gave you all the nights I had, held my heart in trembling hands. I whispered love like it was forever, but you let it slip like sand. I waited for your gentle touch, for the words you'd never say. I stood in the quiet shadow while you slowly walked away. I believed in us completely, even when you barely cared. You made me feel disposable, like I was nothing to hold. I gave you every piece of me, and you let it turn cold. I loved you with every heartbeat, though it shattered me in parts. You made me feel disposable, even as I gave my heart. I carried all your empty promises, tried to fill the space you left. I smiled through your indifference while I cradled my own regret. I forgave what should have hurt over and over again. I loved you in the shadows while you treated me like a friend. I stayed through the neglect, hoping love could change your mind. You made me feel disposable, like a whisper in the wind. I held your fleeting attention while losing myself within. I gave you all my patience, all my trust, all my love. You made me feel disposable, and still I stayed enough. Maybe love shouldn't feel like this. Maybe giving isn't enough. I gave you every heartbeat while you let go of my touch. I'll remember the devotion, even if you never knew. You made me feel disposable, but I survived the truth. You made me feel disposable through the silence and the lies. I loved you when it hurt too much, even when you closed your eyes. I held the love that broke me, even when you tore it apart. You made me feel disposable, but I'm reclaiming my heart. Some love leaves a mark, even when you feel invisible. You were there but never listening. Eyes on me, heart somewhere else. I learned how to hold the silence like it was love I felt. I kept reaching for your hand, but you were already gone. I was loving for the both of us every night alone. I told myself your distance didn't mean goodbye. You made me love alone in a room we shared. I gave you every piece of me. You barely met me there. I fought for us in whispers while you let it fall apart. You made me love alone with an open heart. I stopped asking you to stay, stopped needing you to choose. I carried all the weight of us so I wouldn't lose you. I smiled through the lonely nights, slept beside your doubt. I stayed when love felt one-sided, still I didn't walk out. I called it being patient, but I was breaking down. You made me love alone while you turned away. I learned to cry in quiet rooms so you wouldn't hear the pain. I gave you all my tenderness, you gave me walls and space. You made me love alone and called it fate. Love shouldn't feel like begging or hoping to be seen. I shouldn't have to earn your touch or fight for something free. I thought staying proved my heart, but all it proved was this: I was loving someone who forgot what loving is. You made me love alone till I forgot my worth. I gave you all my light and faith. You left me in the dark. I held on to what we were long after you were gone. You made me love alone for far too long. I loved you like you were still here, but you never truly were. I counted every passing hour, waiting for a door to swing, hoping you'd step through the silence and hear the love I still sing. Your shadow lingers in the corners of the room where we once lay. I kept calling your name softly, but you never found your way. I held the past like a fragile flame, hoping you'd feel it too. You never came back, though I waited every night. I held on to the echoes of a love that slipped from sight. I whispered to the empty walls, hoping they carry you, but you never came back. No matter what I do. I traced the lines of your letters, felt the warmth in your words. I prayed the time would bring you, but the wind carried you away unheard. I loved you through believing you'd return, though my heart already knew. You never came back through the storms and lonely days. I held on to a love that slowly slipped away. I spoke to ghosts of moments and dreams I thought were true. You never came back, and I'm still missing you. Maybe love is letting go, even when hope is blind. I stayed for every maybe, but you left nothing behind. I gave my heart unguarded, even when it hurt to do. Now I'm learning to live without the part that was you. You never came back, though I waited through the pain. I held the space for forever that I'll never hold again. I loved you in the silence when all you gave was life. I whispered, I prayed, I waited, but you never came back. Some love stays in memory for hearts that never find closure. I never tried hard enough. I was holding all the pieces while you watched them fall apart. I kept choosing all the reasons to protect your fragile heart. I waited in the silence, read the truth you never said. I was fighting for forever, you were barely here instead. I kept believing love and patience, but I was standing there alone. You never tried hard enough, you never stayed when it got real. I carried all of the weight, you never learned how to feel. I gave you my every breath while you were halfway out the door. You never tried hard enough to love me more. I forgave the empty promises, the nights you chose to run. I blame myself for your distance, like I wasn't enough to love. I kept lowering my standards just to keep you by my side. You called it complicated, I called it slowly dying inside. I kept hoping you'd wake up before my heart was gone. You never tried hard enough, you let the best of us decay. I begged with all my silence, you turned and looked away. I loved you past my prayers. knew the cracks before the break, felt the distance in your touch. Every silence had a warning, but hope kept asking for too much. You never promised me tomorrow, just enough to make me stay. I kept reading between your lines, searching for words you'd never say. I should have left when love felt lonely, but my heart still wanted proof. I stayed for the chance you'd change your mind, for the version of you I believed in that never came to life. I stayed for the almost, for the dreams we never lived. I let go of what was real, just to stay for the what ifs. I ignored the nights you vanished and the way you pulled away. I called you doubt, just confusion. I called your absence a phase. I kept forgiving every maybe, every reason not to try. I was holding on to shadows while the truth was walking by. I kept choosing all your excuses over what my heart knew. I stayed for the words, for the love we almost found, for the hope you kept alive, just enough to let me drown. I stayed for the someday that you never prayed to give. I lost myself believing in the what ifs I live. Maybe love shouldn't feel like waiting or praying someone sees your worth. I kept betting on your potential while you settled for the hurt. I stayed for the what ifs till my heart was paper thin. I kept loving through the doubt while you never let me in. Now I'm learning how to walk away from the dream that never was. I stayed too long believing in the what ifs. I stayed because some goodbyes don't come from endings, they come from staying far too long. I stayed until I broke myself. Gave you all my mornings, all my nights, my silent cries. I held your doubts like they were mine, even when I lost my skies. I waited through your distance, kept my faith against the storm. I stayed when love was hollow, hoping you'd keep me warm. I whispered prayers no one heard. I carried your shadow in my chest. I stayed until I broke myself, giving more than I could bear. I loved you in the darkness, when you weren't even there. I held the pieces of us, though they fell like fragile glass. I stayed until I broke myself, still I let it pass. I smiled through your indifference. I forgave the lies you told. I painted dreams for two, while my heart was turning cold. I gave you all my patience, even when I had none left. I stayed in love's illusion, said my name like it was easy, like it didn't mean a thing. You held my hands without the weight of knowing what they'd bring. I gave you all the quiet parts, the truths I never showed. You took them like a passing thought, then let them go. I felt the shift, the subtle change, but love kept blinding me. You took my heart lightly, like it couldn't break, like I wasn't giving you everything at stake. You wore my love so easily, then left it on the floor. I was loving you completely, you were loving me for more. You laughed when I got serious, changed the subject when I cried. You called it just a moment while I was building my life. I kept my fears between my ribs so you wouldn't feel the weight, but I was breaking silently, trying not to ask you to stay. I mistook your calm for safety, your silence for control. You took my heart lightly, like it wasn't real, like I could love you halfway and never feel. You held me close when it was easy, let go when it was hard. I was guarding all your feelings, you were careless with my heart. Maybe love was never fragile, I was just too open with you. You never learned how much it costs to be careful with the truth. You took my heart lightly till it couldn't stand the fall. I gave you every honest piece, you never caught them all. Now I'm learning how to carry what you couldn't hold. I won't give my heart to someone who treats love lightly anymore. I loved you with intention, you loved me without care. Held your hand like it would shatter every time you tried to run. I stayed too close when you needed space, but I couldn't turn my love down. I whispered all the words I knew Even when they felt like chains, I gave you all my heart and soul, but couldn't ease your pain. I thought love was holding on, even when it crushed the air we shared. I was holding on too tight when you needed to breathe. I stayed when I should have let go, but I couldn't leave. I loved you in the quiet, I loved you in the fight. I was holding on too tight, even when I wasn't away. I traced the lines of your hesitation, every glance, every sigh. I built a cage around our moments while love just passed me by. I gave you every ounce of patience, even when I had none left. I loved you through the boundaries and stole my own rest. I thought devotion meant control, but love doesn't come this way. I was holding on too tight through the silence and the lies. I stayed when you were drifting, even as our love died. I gave my all and lost myself in the shadows of our night. I was holding on too tight, even when it wasn't right. Maybe love is letting go, even when your heart resists. I thought holding you close was the way to fix what twists. Now I see the cost of my fear of clinging too much to you. I was holding on too tight and it left me broken too. I was holding on too tight when love needed space to breathe. I stayed when I should have released every hope I tried to keep. I loved you past and let loose, past what hearts can bear. I was holding on too tight, and I'm still learning how to care. Some love fades not from leaving, but from holding on too tight. I stayed in the quiet of our room, counting every shadow and light, hoping you'd walk back in someday and make the wrongs feel right. I whispered your name in the night, even though you couldn't hear. I traced the lines of your absence and held back every tear. I kept the door unlocked for your heart, even though you were gone. I was waiting for you through every empty day. I remember the way you smiled, like sunlight through the rain. I kept replaying every word, trying to feel you again. I loved you in the pauses, I loved you in the space between your leaving and returning. I loved you anyway. I told myself patience is love, even when love hurts this much. I was waiting for you when your silence was my pain. I held on to the almost, hoping you'd come again. I kept believing in a heart that left me in the dark. I was waiting for you with an aching, broken heart. Maybe love shouldn't feel like this, a shadow stretching wide. I stayed when I should have let go, but I wanted you inside. I gave you every heartbeat, even when it was in vain. I was waiting for the love that you'd never sustain. I was waiting for you through the storms and the cold. I held the space for your return, even when I should have let go. Now I'm learning to stand alone with the ache I can't undo. I was waiting for you. I was waiting for you. Some hearts wait for a lifetime for someone who'll never return. I wasn't ready to lose you. Your coat still hangs by the door. I told myself you'd be back soon, like I've told myself before. I replay every last moment, searching for something I miss, a word I should have held tighter, a sign I should have kissed. If love was a warning, I never heard the sound. I wasn't ready to lose you. I had to learn how to let go. My heart was still building forever, while yours was already alone. You slipped through my hands so softly, like I should have somehow known. I wasn't ready to lose you. Not this close. I kept all the plans we were making, like promises carved in the air. Every someday now feels wasted. Every future feels unfair. I stayed strong in front of your silence, every breath without you feels heavier every day. You moved on so quietly, I stayed where we fell apart. I wasn't ready to lose you, I still believe we had time. I thought love meant holding on harder, not learning how to say goodbye. You let go without shaking, I'm still breaking inside. I wasn't ready to lose you, I wasn't ready to trust. If I'd known it was the ending, I would have loved you louder, I would have stayed a little closer, I would have fought a little harder. Now every almost haunts me, every chance I let slide. You left before I was ready and took half of my life. I wasn't ready to lose you, I still say your name in my sleep. I carry the weight of your leaving in places no one can see. If love is learning to live through the pain, then I'm still learning to breathe. I wasn't ready to lose you, you were still everything to me. Some goodbyes come too early and never let